How's it going? It has been an incredibly long time since I made a video recap. I kind of got lazy, got a little burnt out on making the videos for a while, but I was recently reinvigorated after an awesome session in a really cool spot. This place called D20 Tavern in Denton, Texas. They let you come in, you can actually play D&D in an actual dungeon. Super fun. But yeah, that kind of reinvigorated me to do this. I've just been lazy. I moved. I'm in a completely different apartment now, about 45 minutes up the highway. We have been playing. We've been playing pretty consistently since the last video. So what this video is going to be is, I'm not going to remember a ton of stuff that's happened because there's been, I don't know, like 5 sessions since the last video. But we got to get that ball rolling again. So I felt like when I was doing these weekly, which I'm going to try to do going forward again, I felt like when I was doing these weekly, it really helped me to remember things that happened in the sessions, and I felt like it improved the quality of the game sessions as well. I feel like when I'm not doing these videos, it's kind of hard for me at the game session to recall things because I'll just kind of forget. I don't take great notes. So usually I will use these videos, and while editing them and stuff, it'll just like burn it into my mind. And so I can remember stuff better. So I believe, I haven't checked the last video upload, but I think the last time we uploaded a video, we were in the old world, in the Yuan-Ti Empire, like 1,000 years ago. And the party was getting ready to fight Sin. They had fought their way up to the castle and they were about to go in. They were not gravely hurt, but pretty hurt, and the party was all separated. Billy Bob Jr. had been separated from the party on kind of his distraction quest. Well, we start the session and Pax has been holding on to that lamp that he's had, right? So he busts this thing out and he uses the lamp, and each time they use it, there's a higher chance for the genie to basically attack them instead of help them. But he rolls, it was like a 96, which is basically a nat 20 on a D100. So he not only gets to help him, he gets a wish spell. So they decide to use the wish spell to, what they say is that we want to bring the party together and have them be stronger than ever. So what we did was I gave them a long rest and teleported the party back together, and when they got the long rest, I had already written in my notes that they were going to level up. So the party leveled up to level 6. This completely changed the entire situation because previously this whole thing, like the boss battle was not just the boss battle. This entire situation was building up. That it was kind of like a long, slow build to the boss battle. You got to take the resources down and stuff. So it was looking a little dire, but with this insane roll, it completely flipped the entire thing. The party defeats Sin. Long story short, they escape back to the pyramid, take the scepter back out, and go back to the future, right? And they escape back into the forests of the old world. Mateo was able to take the staff with him, the one that was in the pyramid. Basically, they were able to successfully stop Sin from completing this ritual that was going to ascend him to demigodhood. So big success, and they escape out and they're making their way back through the jungle to reconvene with the druids and try to go back to Ravon, that western town, and go on to their next adventure. So while they're walking back through the jungle, they come back across this airship, the crash site where Billy Bob, they had run into that GIF, I forgot his name at this point, but they ran into that guy, and Roger, I think it was Roger, the guy who died in the river. They were at this airship, and for some reason, which I still don't understand to this day, Pax and Billy Bob Jr. decided to rub the lamp again to try to get another wish. This was extremely reckless because the chance that things go wrong increases by 20% each time. So now they're looking at a 60% chance of failure. And I had explained this when they did the roll for back in the Yuan-Ti Empire, but they wanted to do it anyway. I think at this point, the party, at least at least it seemed like Pax definitely, and not just the characters, the players, were kind of feeling their oats at this point, and a little hubris, I think, took over. So they rubbed the lamp, and this genie came out. They rolled like a 27, and the genie came out and annihilated the party. Gaston went down very quickly. Billy Bob Jr. ran off into the jungle, and Pax and Mateo had to take cover in the airship. Gaston goes down, and not only does he go down, but the genie keeps attacking him and kills him and cuts his head off. Gaston is dead. D-E-A-D, capital D, capital E, capital A, capital D, dead. This was the first player death of the campaign. And the genie was not even halfway done. He was about to annihilate the whole party when Mateo came out and begged for some sort of deal that they could do. I had him roll a persuasion check, and no matter what he rolls, his only success is going to be a very tough deal. And the genie offered him, in exchange for Gaston's life, his life. And in heroic fashion, Mateo accepts this and sacrifices himself as he disappears in a cloud of smoke. Gaston returns to life. He has his head back, but he's got this big scar that goes all around his neck. The genie disappears, and Mateo now is no more. So we lose Mateo from the group, which was crazy because he had this huge backstory thing that's been building the whole time with this book, and all these souls from everything he kills are getting sucked into this book. Someone's been communicating with him. Whoever that is has lost communication with him. And everything he was wearing, he was carrying their bag of holding. He was carrying the book. He was carrying all his gear. It's all gone. Never just into the ether. Gaston comes to, and he doesn't really know what's just happened, but Pax explains it to him. And it's right there in that spot that Gaston vows to never rest until he finds a way to bring back Mateo. This is obviously not going to be something they can just go do willy-nilly. Bringing someone back, in at least in my campaigns, you're definitely going to need the materials for it, and it's going to be very hard to find something like a diamond worth 1,000 gold. You can't just buy a bunch of diamonds up to 1,000 gold. You got to find one worth 1,000 gold. There's going to be some kind of crazy quest involved that will risk the lives of the other players. So this huge moment happens, which was really the heaviest moment, and I thought was just the coolest thing. This was like the ultimate sacrifice. This is what a DM loves. It's like the blood of role playing. So I thought the whole thing was awesome. Gaston swearing to, never rest until he can avenge his friend, and he always fights in the honor of Gaston. Pax as well. Billy Bob Jr. finally comes back through the jungle and rejoins the party, and they decide to use this airship, which Pax was trying to figure out while they were fighting the genie. Billy Bob Jr., being a GIF, kind of has a innate ability to operate this thing. He rolls an intelligence check. We add his proficiency. He's able to operate it, and they use the ship to get back to Ravon. So the party flies the airship. They fly. It's not really an airship. It's an astral ship. So they had the opportunity to go to the astral plane. They decided that was just not something they wanted to do right now. So instead, they used the airship to fly back to Ravon. And when they return to Ravon, they kind of go back to the town. They meet back up with Annie. She asks how everything went. They kind of explain how they lost Mateo, and while they're shopping, they meet this elf, this kind of pale-skinned, wide-eyed elf that doesn't know when to stop staring at you. And this is Aogon. This is Zach's new character, and he joins the party. This pale elven cleric. It's a certain kind of elf. I forget what it was, but he comes from this mountainous area, and he's got really awkward social skills that kind of make people uncomfortable, but it's really fun for role play sometimes. So he joins the party, and they basically rest up, and while they're kind of figuring out what to do, kind of coming to terms with what happened. They're hailed as heroes in the town, even though they lost their friend. Annie brings them a missive that had been sent from Astoria, from this guy named Baron Philip. And he is in Lordsport, which is a royal coastal shipping town off the east coast of Astoria, which would be, they're near the west coast of Ravon. So they take this note. The next morning, they wake up, and Billy Bob Jr. decides that he has had enough of this running around, getting themselves almost killed, and he decides to part ways with the party. Hippie unfortunately also had to, well, that's obviously why Hippie had to leave the group for personal reasons, but we carry on with our three heroes, and we started immediately looking for someone else to fill the spot, which we'll get to in a little bit here. The party gets up the next day, they kind of clean themselves up, and they decide that it's time to depart the old world and start heading towards Astoria to try to answer this call from Baron Philip. In this letter from Baron Philip, basically word had gotten to Astoria pretty quickly that this group of adventurers had killed this wyvern that had been terrorizing the town of Ravon for some time. And so Baron Philip, this guy who needs something done, sent out this letter asking for an audience, willing to hire them and pay them some coin to complete a job for him. So he told them his location, and the party decides to answer the call and sets out towards Eastport, which is the final town in the old world before you sail off across the Maria Channel to Astoria. So the party makes their way towards Eastport. Along the way, they come up to some bandits who are trying to stay. Well, they were highway robbers, but they had gotten wrapped up in a bit of an issue with some like monstrous quicksand. It was actually a dune mimic, which is like this mimic that is like quicksand basically. They saved these guys. The dudes still try to rob them after getting saved, and the party kills all but one of them, the first guy who stopped them on the road, this guy named John Samsonite, and they bargain for his life. He bargains for his life, and basically he's like, I have some money here, like in the hideout. If you spare my life, I'll give you all the gold. There's like 100 gold in there. So they make him lead them to it, and sure enough, they uncover this gold stash, and they learn from this guy that he works for an organization called the Scarlet Syndicate, which is a criminal organization based out of Brexton. Now, this guy John Samsonite, he's a low tier in this hierarchy of thieves, and he works for this guy named Malazan, who in turn has his boss, and Malazan is basically going to be expecting money from him, and he's just letting them know that, and they decide to take him along. They think maybe he can help them get in and try to uncover some secrets of this thief syndicate. So they make their way to Eastport. They get a boat with this guy Malachi. Malachi is a fisherman, tradesman, not an adventurer, just this guy who takes the trade ships back and forth across the Maria Channel, bringing supplies back and forth. He basically tells them there's two ways they can go. They could go to Lordsport, or they could go to Jackport, which is kind of like this less civilized area of Astoria. They're not concerned with that. They want to go to Lordsport and answer this call. So they pay him some gold, and they ship off across the Maria Channel in a merchant vessel. They spend a couple nights on the water. We have some fun. We actually played this dice game called Pig, and basically you roll 2d6 and you try to get as high of a number without hitting a 1. No, you roll 1d6. You try to roll as high of a number you can without hitting a 1, and when you hold, you lock in that number. You go around. It was a lot of fun. We were gambling. The first round goes really well for the party. They win some gold. The second round's not going so well. I, as the NPC, am kicking their ass, and they start doing some like hijinks and some little shenanigans. So we're rolling deception checks, all this cool stuff. Pax is the one playing, so he's like trying to flip the die. He's doing some sleight of hand checks. Aogon is like making an invisible hand, kind of move the die in certain directions. Gaston, however, is refraining from gambling because Gaston has had a problem in the past with gambling before he became a paladin. He shaped up, turned his life around from his life of like degeneracy and became this paladin of solace, or became this paladin, and is an upstanding member of society now with a giant scar around his neck. So we have some fun doing some betting. In the second round of betting, they actually won the deed to a ship from these dudes named Guy and Pal, which were actually NPCs that we had in our first campaign. And we kind of improved our way into realizing that Sidonia, our old continent, our old world, is actually part of this universe. It's like way across the sea on another continent, which was kind of fun to come up with. And these dudes, Guy and Pal, which were kind of just these dumb, happy-go-lucky, not worried about nothing sailors. And they had this ship called the No Good Doer, which the party from the first campaign had acquired and had them like working on and stuff. So it just so happens that they are now here in Astoria and they've got this ship. They bet the deed. The party wins the ship. It's in Lordsport. We haven't made use of it yet, but it's kind of cool that now they have this old ship from the first campaign that they can now make use of if they decide to sail off somewhere. They also hear tales about the ship graveyard to the west where there's like untold hidden treasures, all this cool stuff. But a storm rolls in eventually, as it always does whenever you sail in D&D, and they come up on some rocks in the channel that have come up out of the just shallow waters where these rock pillars have come up out of the ocean. The ship is starting to try to steer around it when these pirates attack the ship. These pirates are not from Astoria. These pirates are from a place called Valerian, and this place is another different continent that is more high technology. I'm kind of using inspirations of Eberron for this place. If the party ever goes to visit it, that's going to be the vibe. So we have these like gear mage dwarfs who have like clockwork armor, and they are riding these, what did I call them? Sea splitters or something. And what they basically are these ships with these glass tanks in the back where a fire elemental is trapped inside, and there's little holes inside of it that are just small enough that the fire elemental can't escape, but he can provide thrust. And so this thing works like a sea-doo, like a jet ski, and they're jet skiing around attacking the party. The party is able to defeat them, but they do cause enough chaos on the ship that the ship is run into the rocks and the ship actually goes down right towards the end of the fight. They capture one of these guys and he tells them that he can get them an airship if they spare his life. So they agree to that. Now we're looking at 2 ships. It's getting crazy. But they get this guy, the ship goes down, they're able to save a lot of the gear and get on lifeboats, save most of the crew, and they, at that point, start rowing towards the other end of the channel, which is still a decent distance away. That's where we ended that session, I believe, and then we picked up the next session with 2 new players. So, one of my best friends ever, Frankie, has joined our group, and Brandon has joined our group, and he is playing Otaro, which this character is a barbarian, and he is a boar folk, which is really cool because Brandon actually homebrewed this race, and you've got your bear folk, and I think he's more human than boar for the most part, but he's got boar features to him, which is really cool for a barbarian. And then of course we have Frankie playing Sheldon the Wise, the legendary Sheldon the Wise. He played this character in our first campaign when we had 2 groups going. He was in the other group. And so Sheldon is a turtle wizard. He is this old wizard with signs of dementia. He always forgets what he's doing. He's always wandering, doesn't know where he's going, but he always comes in clutch at just the right moment. So he comes in and they come in sailing just on their boat. And Sheldon was searching for something, but he cannot remember. Otaro has kind of joined him. We didn't really go into why they were together. We probably should have explored that more. But they're kind of traveling together for the time being. And they come across these lifeboats, these guys who are stranded at sea. They kind of group up, and of course, they decide to join and help them and guide them back to Astoria, to Lordsport. Along the way, they run into an aboleth who had a tentacle that was sticking up out of the ocean that was made to look like a drowning sailor. They fight this thing, they kill it. We make our way to Lordsport. They arrive, and they are now finally, after 15 sessions are in Astoria, which is where I had originally planned the campaign to be in the first place. The party enters the city, where they go to the tavern known as the Holy Grail, and they do some shopping. They go to the Lord's Locket, which is this jewelry store, and they're looking for a diamond. Aegon, I believe, is the one looking for the diamond. Gaston accompanies him. They do some shopping, blah, blah, blah. Pax, while they are getting back on the docks, is helping unload the crates onto the dock, and he looks inside one of these crates and he finds under like a bunch of dried fish, he finds this something wrapped up in a blanket. So he pulls these fish away and pulls this thing out, and there's a sword with like this black steel sword with these like skulls on the hilt, some of them glowing with red eyes. And Pax is immediately like, Malachi, what the fuck is this? Malachi's kind of like, dude, I just deliver stuff. I knew there was something in this delivery that was special, but just put it back, because the person buying it is really going to want whatever is in these crates. So please put it back. Pax is not letting the sword go. So he pays Malachi like 400 or 600 gold. Malachi is definitely not happy about this, but he agrees to at least take the gold. He really can't deny Pax. So Pax gets this sword. He doesn't know what it is, so they go on a mission to identify it. They search around town for a scroll, some kind of magic scroll, so that Sheldon can study it as a wizard and learn it into a spell book so that he can identify the sword. So they spend the rest of the day kind of exploring the town and gathering these supplies. Once the sun starts to go down, Sheldon goes up into the rooms that they had rented out, and he starts focusing on this scroll to learn the identify spell. Meanwhile, the rest of the party goes to the royal place where Baron Philip is, the royal offices of Lordsport, and they have a meeting with this guy. When they walk in, Aegon and Gaston notice that Baron Philip keeps on like looking at Pax almost if he recognizes him, but he doesn't say anything. I've heard of your deeds in Ravon. I need someone like a special task force. There's this guy up like northeast of here who lives in this place called the Misty Pines, and he has this estate, and Lord Brexton, the King of Astoria, has been unable to collect taxes from this guy. People have been disappearing up there, and most importantly of all, Lord Brexton is trying to expand his sphere of influence, and he needs to have basically complete control of the surrounding areas around Brexton for his rule. So this guy, Baron Philip, has been tasked with extracting this guy, and he's tried a few times and has failed every time. So he hears about these dudes. He offers to pay them like 12,000 gold, 6,000 up front, 6,000 when they get back, if they can bring this guy back, and they need to bring him back alive. The party agrees to it, and they sign the contract, and it's at that point that they learn of this individual's identity, which is Vlad von Richten, and he is probably a vampire. Meanwhile, while Sheldon is back in the tavern studying the spell, he's kind of multitasking, and he's summoned a familiar, a little rat, to go downstairs into the bar and just listen for rumors or things that are going on. Just listen around, see what's going on. So he hears two royal guards that are off duty, talking about a big announcement that Lord Brexton is supposed to make at the Harvest Festival in 2 weeks. It's this big festival, come springtime or whenever it is, I guess it's fall time, when everyone harvests all the food. There's this big festival, and there's games and competitions and stuff in the city. So that's happening in 2 weeks, and there's rumors of a big announcement that Brexton is planning to make. So he gets this information right around the time the party comes back, and they go upstairs, and it's just about that time that Sheldon has completed learning this spell, transcribing it into his spell book, and he identifies this sword that Pax has obtained. He finds out that this is none other than a legendary ancient sword known as the Nine Lives Stealer. This sword, First of all, it's +2, so this is the strongest weapon that the group has at this point. If you score a critical hit with this sword, the person you're attacking has to make a Constitution saving throw. If they fail, they die instantly, and their soul gets sucked into the sword. So it's extremely powerful. And so once they realize what they've got, everyone's super stoked, and they kind of sheath the sword and they go to bed and get ready to leave. So we are now going into session 16. The party wakes up and they get ready for their traveling up this eastern road that travels to Vlad von Richten's estate in the Misty Pines. And they collect some goods and belongings, and they prepare to leave. They meet John Samsonite. He did travel with them. He is down in the tavern, and he has just been kind of just a little bit nervous about his higher up arriving in town. And about the time that they're eating breakfast, he does see that this guy Malazan has come into town. Very brightly dressed, kind of bardic looking, rides on a horse, almost looks noble. And he's got his posse with him, just a group of guys, you know. And he goes down to the docks, and they see that he's actually talking to Malachi. Turns out he's the guy that was buying those crates. Malachi, they're pretty far away. It's as they're leaving to go up the path, they see this. They're pretty far away. They do see Malachi's talking to this guy, and the dude's just being super cordial, super polite. Seems that there's been an issue, but the guy's like, it's all good, it's all good, it's all cool. So the party leaves, and they tell John to stay behind, John Samsonite, and just kind of keep an eye on things. So they start heading up this path. The first thing they come across is a pair of red caps. Now, red caps are like these nasty little old men who are cursed, and they have to soak their caps in blood every few days of a human's blood, or they exhaust and die. This was kind of a throwaway random encounter that I wanted to just get started, just having the trail be a little creepy, set the tone of like this is a less traveled road. And so there's just some weirdness going on. So they run into this pair of dudes. One's already exhausted, like against the tree. The other one is like trying to eat a deer carcass, but it's not working because they have to soak themselves in the blood of a human. So he turns on them, sees them. There's a small fight. They kick the guy's ass and kind of tie him up, question him. They don't really get any information out of these guys, so they take off their hats, and when they do, these guys disintegrate into dust. And they basically keep going along their way. After night falls, they decide that it's time to make camp. Aogon looks for a clearing somewhere that they could camp off the trail. He actually finds this strange clearing, like a few dozen yards off the trail, where a bunch of wood has been chopped down and piled up into neat piles. And they decide this is a good place to rest. So now our party of 6, Pax, Gaston, Aogon, Sheldon, and Otaro, they all set up camp, and as the sun goes down, Sheldon is kind of just keeping an eye out in the woods, and he sees as the darkness falls a bonfire that is burning deeper into the woods. And as he notices this, he also sees skeletons. These animated skeletons with axes are marching directly towards the party's location. He sees there's like 30 of them, and he tells the party, lets them know Otaro's getting pumped up to fight. But as the skeletons approach the campsite, they kind of walk in and then just completely ignore the party. They start chopping wood, picking up these bundles of wood, and then heading back towards this bonfire off in the darkness somewhere. Sheldon, at this point, Sheldon had actually turned himself into a skeleton to try to disguise himself, but he turned into a giant turtle skeleton. Fortunately, they completely ignore the party, and the party wisely doesn't mess with them. And so there is just this conveyor belt of skeletons marching, kind of like Mickey Mouse and Fantasia with all the broomsticks. They're just marching, cutting wood all around them and surrounding areas in the forest and taking it back to this bonfire. Party decides that after 20 or 30 minutes of this happening that it might be safe to rest. So they go ahead and take shifts, and they are able to sleep through the night until finally the sun comes up and they decide to go investigate. Aogon goes ahead, tries tries to stealth, rolls pretty low, but even so, he finally comes onto this smoking, smoldering clearing where there used to be this bonfire. Next to it, there's a hut, this little hut, a huge pile of de-animated skeletons, and just this bonfire, which is like smoking. And right above the bonfire is like this little mote of black energy, just kind of like, they see this, they're kind of like, this is weird, whatever, we're not gonna fuck with this, we got a mission, let's go. They turn around, they go back on the trail, and they start heading up. They travel the first half of the day, not much to speak about, but they eventually come to the end of this road where this old bridge has collapsed. This bridge that goes from this path kind of stretches across this area of the cliffs, which has collapsed. And then on the other end, this small goat path continues up towards the Misty Pines where Vlad von Richten's estate is. The bridge is like, I forgot, it was like 100 feet across. And so there's like a good like 80-foot, 100-foot gap and just a giant collapsed cliff and just ocean crashing against the cliff walls below, like kind of the Irish cliff, the cliffs of Ireland. That situation, long drop. So they see this and decide instead to get some climbing gear and try to go way around and climb up this wall face and just skip the bridge entirely. They fortunately had brought, Pax had in his gear bag some pittons, and so him being a Dhampir, he can literally just climb across walls without needing to do checks. He sets up these pittons across the wall. The group ties off once again like they did in the river, but this time they do it easily, there's no issues. The party basically rock climbs across the wall to the other side of this bridge. Sheldon decided to take a gaseous form and not risk falling because it was an athletics check and he's an old man. So he turns into a cloud of gas, kind of flies across, and he actually flies up to go check out what's above. The rest of the party, once they get to the other side, Atarl, as he is leading up the caboose, he's taking all the pittons out to use them again later. And they arrive at the other end of this bridge where they find this monument that basically says this monument is here to honor the brave soldiers who died defending it during the uprising against the Scarlet Tyranny. There's kind of like this vague monument. They investigate a little further, and Aogon like grabs the arm of like this statue, and it kind of crumbles, and one of the pieces of rock falls and skips across into this gap where the bridge had collapsed and actually lands like in midair, like the leap of faith bridge style. So they test this out, come to find that there is a spirit guarding this bridge, which they had completely gone around. And there was kind of this funny moment where he's like, "You're not going to pass," and they're like, "Well, we don't need to. We already got around." Basically, skip the whole thing, just climbed around it. They make their way up the goat path, and they eventually get to the edge of the Misty Pines. Once again, they are standing in front of a vast forest, foggy and misty, except unlike in the old world where the mist was rolling out along the ground, the fog here hangs in the air, still very thick and just unmoving, almost muting sound. Sheldon, still in his gaseous form, flies up a little bit to try to get a better view, and he can see the castle, the Vlad von Richten's castle, far off in the distance, and this large misty forest in front of them. So he's the first to go in. He goes into the fog and like tries not to dissipate into it because he's gas, but he's able to keep it together, and the rest of the party goes in behind him. And that is when I have the party all roll D4s. Group 1, 2, and one group 3, 4 in the second group. So the first group ended up being Sheldon, who also, after everyone else rolled I believe a 1. And Sheldon, Pax, and Atarl. And then in the second group was Aogon and Gaston. So the group is traveling when they finally slowly start to realize that they've been split up. And the first group to kind of come into a clearing is this first group. with Sheldon, Pax, and Otaro. They come out into this opening where there's this old, just abandoned, small, tiny hamlet of a village with a church at the end of this row of houses, where there's this big kind of rusted church bell with like an upside down satanic cross on it. And as they step into this town, all the doors just slowly swing open, and just a huge horde of zombies, and they're all wearing like their Sunday clothes, like priest and nun clothes, just start pouring out of the church and out of these homes, just being like, church, church, and swarm on the party. In the other group, Gaston and Aogon are walking through this misty wood when they hear a voice that starts mocking them. This well-spoken, just taunting individual who happens to be a vampire spawn of Vlad von Richten. This guy is, I believe he was a CR5, right? So that's a medium challenge. The CR doesn't work in 5th edition, but anyway, just to give you reference, that's a medium challenge for a level 5 party. These guys are level 6, and there's only 2 of them. So this is dangerous. This guy got to them before Vlad did, and he wants to like suck their blood and kill them. So he immediately goes in for the kill, attacks Gaston, jumps on his back and bites him. Meanwhile, in the other group, they are just slashing through these zombies. Otaro finally goes into a rage for the first time. This is his second session with the group. He's like finally, and he just goes into a rage and starts tearing through these zombies. Pax is doing the exact same. He splits into his echo, and they just start cutting through these zombies. They're just pouring out, and after like one round, really, they were like, oh, they're just gonna keep coming. So there must be something else we can do. Sheldon, in his gaseous form, like floats down on top of this, on top of one of these buildings, drops his gaseous form, goes back into total form, and he's like, surprise, motherfuckers, and he drops a fireball, which I had completely forgotten about, and just explodes this entire group of zombies, but they keep on coming. So what are they gonna do? Back in the other group, this is the group that I'm worried about, because this vampire spawn is going for the kill. But it is Gaston's turn, and Gaston proceeds to have like the most insane turn of all time, because he is a paladin and this vampire is undead. And that is the paladin's specialty, is laying the smackdown on the undead. So he does, it was like 60 damage to this thing in one turn, right? Drops his divine smites, top level, and Gaston is going into like this righteous frenzy. And it was really cool because he was role playing into it, even as he's like just destroying this thing. One round, this vampire like changes his mind and tries to run for it, but it's too late. They've got him. Aogon gets a turn, brings him within death's door. And then when the vampire gets a turn, he disengages, tries to run. Gaston Sentinel attacks him, and then just holy strike, boom, just breaks the dude's head. The guy drops. And Gaston is just like heavily breathing, just like in this like divine fury. Meanwhile, across the way, Pax brings up the idea to the group that they keep saying church, like, what about that bell? And he tells Sheldon, hey, you should shoot that bell, because it was like all the way across on the other side of the yard over there. So Sheldon's like, okay, whips up a fireball, throws it at the bell, boom. All the zombies at once, Resident Evil style, just stop what they're doing, turn, and just begin to walk into the church and completely ignore the party. And they all sit down for church service as one of the zombies goes up to the podium and just kind of like stands there. That is when Vlad von Richten makes his appearance. He flies down, and I rolled to see which group he went to. He actually went to Gaston and Aogon. So this swarm of bats flies down, coalesces into this form. All the bat wings like grab onto each other, fold up, and then like morph into this tall vampire. Your classic looking, basically Strahd, your Dracula. He's a vampire. very well spoken, very charismatic, and he's very polite and inviting. Gaston is ready to kill this guy, and he doesn't want to hear anything he's got to say. He's like, where are my friends? Like, where are my people? Vlad apologizes. He waves his hand and the mist clears, and suddenly the party, they're like 10 yards over there. Were they there the whole time? Who knows? But now the party's back together, and they are face to face with Vlad von Richten. And so they have a short conversation, and Vlad immediately looks over at Pax, and he's like, Mr. Pax, you haven't aged a day. I didn't expect you to ever come back. So there's this weird moment. And Pax has been here before. He knows this because he was previously in the military, and they had been sent on a mission, but they hadn't even gotten past the forest line before most of his outfit was killed, and he was able to escape, but not before being bitten and turning into a Dhampir. So he hasn't met Vlad before, but Vlad knows him. Gaston is just staring daggers at me. He's still holding his hammer up. It's his holy amulet is glowing, and Vlad is doing his best to just be like, look, I'm not trying to fight you. I came as soon as I saw that there was a ruckus down here. He invites them to his estate. He said that there's a meal prepared, that they are guests of the Vlad von Richten estate, and he'll give them warm food, he'll let them bathe, take showers, whatever. Please come inside. And they really don't want to have it. And he's just like, let's at least eat dinner, and then we can talk, and then you can decide what you want to do. So they agree. He summons his magical undead chariot, which is like pulled by these two like nightmare horses. The doors magically open, and he invites the party to enter, and they do. And Vlad gets up on the reins and takes them up the hill towards his estate. And that is where we ended session 16. And now we are finally, we are caught up. So that was the last like 5 sessions. I'm going to try to start doing this weekly again. I really do feel like it helps me recall and improves the quality of the game. So I know that was a huge dump. I don't know if anyone's even going to want to watch this thing, but I'm going to put it out there. More than excited to have the players that we have now. Having Frankie and Brandon, this new guy I've just met, he's super cool. We're becoming fast friends, and all my good homies, just, always bringing the energy, making it a great time. Shout out to Lexi for acquiring an actual dungeon for us to play in last week. I think that really reinvigorated my desire to start doing these videos again too. So that was fucking awesome. Yeah, we got to play in a dungeon. So we had an awesome, fun session. I can't wait till next Sunday when we will be entering Vlad's estate. And I'm really interested to see the decisions that the party makes on what they want to do about this guy. So I don't want to say too much about my thoughts, but that is where we're at. We got a really cool group, and hopefully it sticks. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in. If you've gotten this far, that was session 16. So I'll be back next week with session 17, campaign diary. Oh yeah, I forgot to say that at the beginning. Campaign diary, campaign session recap for Astoria campaign.